Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. Season 2 of the Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the ARC Podcast, here with myself, Donny, and Liz. We've got an exciting conversation today. We are coming into one of the busiest times of year for accountants in all different positions and roles. And on that topic, we run this risk of burnout and stress and all of these things where we tend to not take care of ourselves while we are, running really fast to try to get a lot of work done in a really compressed period of time. So we're going to have some conversations around like what's worked well, what maybe hasn't worked so well for us individually, and how we as leaders can also help our team to, handle and avoid the burnout for the year. And on that, I just want to mention one of the things that I've learned the hard way is if I don't plan ahead, it's not going to get done. And this is kind of a silly example, but I realized recently I used to go to a haircut place that was like walk-in only. You only went in for, when you needed a haircut. And I was perpetually beyond needing a haircut. The afro was way too big. There was way too much going on. And I recently made a shift to using a local woman who started her own thing. And the first time I went in, she's like, schedule your next appointment. And I was like, what do you mean schedule my next haircut? I've never done this. And so we talked about how many weeks to do and stuff and put in the appointment. And now all of a sudden, like I have it on my calendar. And even though things are going on and sometimes I almost feel too busy, it's already on my calendar. So I actually go and I get my haircut. And now I don't get the big afro and it's go beyond it. So, coming into the busy season, I would say all of those things that you need to do to take care of yourself, put them on the calendar now. So when you're in the busy time, they're already there for you and you just need to show up.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
I thought life lessons, midlife realizations. You need haircut.
When you're almost halfway to 100, you think about this stuff.
But well taken, because I agree with that. That is one of the ones. If it's not blocked out earlier, it's not going to end up happening. So I would kind of change a little bit of the way you mentioned that. So right. So for personal care things, you should schedule them and put them on your calendar.
Yeah. I go like a step further than that, though. It's not just about making sure that I have things calendared for self-care, but also I know my work habits. And so I design my schedule, and particularly in busy season, around my work habits. So I try really hard to keep Mondays and Fridays unscheduled. And I reserve it for emergency meetings or time blocking for fire drills, because I find fire drills for me always happen Monday morning or Friday afternoon. And I would like to avoid weekend working. So I keep my Fridays, and particularly Friday afternoon, I'm very selfish about, to make sure that I have those time blocks so that I don't have to work all weekend. I can get the things done before I sign off. And then I know that I have a block Monday morning, so I don't have to sign on early on Sunday to get something done. I can just show up at my normal time on Monday morning. I have a time block. I work through the stuff that has to get done. And that way I avoid sacrificing my weekends to work.
Like that. My protected time, and I think of a lot of this as also making sure that we're drawing the right boundaries, because in some webinars that I've done in the past on this, it's really about drawing the right boundaries. So drawing the boundaries around your weekend and protecting them. My two times for that are Tuesday afternoon, because I find Monday is a lot of let's get stuff moving, so I need to get everyone moving. Tuesday afternoon is the part where I'm like, okay, I'm just generally caught up on the Monday. I have some meetings Tuesday morning, but Tuesday afternoon is like, okay, let me get some real work done. And then I actually block all day Friday and protect that, both for meetings that I can fit in, but the other benefit to that one is I can take off early if I want to, and be able to start that. So if I push myself a little more during the week, I usually will take a half a day on Friday.
And that's both of these examples, I think, highlight a really cool technology that a lot of people are using, but I think people are using incorrectly. And that's the calendar scheduling links. So I'm a huge fan of the links, but I am a huge fan because I have many different links that have different parameters around them. So I think a lot of people will just set up like one link and then they kind of let people like just hijack their calendar at all times. And I have, for example, my Fridays, the only link that you're allowed to schedule a Friday call is a link I share with friends to catch up for 45 minutes. That's my like Friday catch up calls. And, I have so many different links. That's probably one of the nightmares that I have created because I have to manage all these different links that I have. But each one is very intentional. Like I have customer meetings and there's very specific parameters around that. There's demo calls and there's specific parameters around that. There's vendor calls and those are even more restrictive. So, if you do have a calendar link and it's just kind of like wide open, I highly encourage people to use the ability to set up different links with specific parameters so your calendar is not being hijacked all the time.
Calendar links scare me because of that. And also, like, if somebody gets a hold of it that's not supposed to have it or keeps it from the past and then puts a meeting on, I absolutely abhor that. So I'm old-fashioned in that if you want to meet with me, you're gonna have to coordinate it with me as a live human or potentially my assistant. But she also knows that I'm very particular with when and where I will meet with people. And it feels very uncomfortable to me to have those links live where other people could have them.
That's really interesting. Because I also love the calendar links, and actually, I just took a tip from Byron on. I'm actually going to create, especially the vendor ones. I'm going to create a separate one that I give to them because usually I tell everyone here just use this.
Right.
But I think I'll start isolating the vendors because those are the ones that tend to book up my calendar. It's like most of the time it's not urgent. Like I'm just getting an update or becoming familiar with something for them. And your example is interesting, Liz, too, because one of the things I started recommending, especially for tax people, was, hey, get some of the tax return, for example, delivery off of your plate by recording the walkthrough of the return and then offering the link afterwards to say, hey, clients, if you want to follow up on anything or you have questions about the walkthrough I just did for you, here's a link to schedule time to actually meet with me as a tax person.
Yeah, I would actually recommend adding an automation to that where they get an email with the link after they've watched the video. So they like once you get that
Keep it.
notification, yeah, absolutely. Because
So if they
don't
don't
schedule
watch the
time with
video, they
me
can't
and
meet
don't
with
watch the
you.
video. Yeah, yeah, no doubt. But
Good control.
one note, I have yet to have anybody like hijack my link and just try to like put time on the calendar. So maybe I'm not important enough, Liz, but I've not run into that issue.
I
I don't think that's the issue. I
same
think
here, Liz. I don't think I haven't had that issue.
I did for like a whole year where different vendors were sharing not only that, but my personal cell phone number which I
Wow.
only give to
Oh, that I
friends.
never did.
And I was getting bombarded by meetings that were put on my calendar. And I spent like a week literally going through the next year of my calendar and deleting and canceling things that were not authorized by me to be put there. Um, and it gave me a bit of trauma response. So then I
Yeah.
Mhm.
deleted Calendly and was like, nope, okay, we go back. We go back in time. Um,
But you know
but
what? Actually,
scheduling is also just very difficult for me as a human because I am incredibly ADHD, and sometimes that means that like I can't do it. Like I have days where
Yeah.
it is physical torture to sit still and have meetings back to back, and I need to be flexible and cancel and move things, or like I go insane and turn into a caged animal. And nobody wants to talk to me on those days because I'm kind of explosive, to be fair, and I know this about myself, so I walk away. But then I have other days where I'm like, I could talk for 15 hours straight and be super happy with everybody I talk to and super excited and energized. And so I try to capitalize on those days. So if there's, people I need to meet with, I'll reach out in the morning and be like, hey, I have some time open today randomly. Do you want to move our meeting up?
I'm gonna translate that to a tip for the listeners, which is just being aware of when you're at your best for the meetings or when it makes the most sense. Like I know some people that only do meetings in the morning or only do meetings in the afternoon, and some of that is to protect that time to work during one time or another time.
Yeah.
Definitely a valid strategy there. But you know what? I was thinking Byron's approach actually might be the solution for you, which is once you authorize someone that it gives them
27.
a one-time
Yeah.
use link that they
One
can
time use.
schedule.
Yeah. There's so many restrictions on it though. It books out like 2 months. You just can't meet with me for 2 months. No, that became the problem is when I put so many restrictions on everything. It booked out
All of a
so
sudden,
far in advance.
one 30-minute meeting available in 30 days.
Yes, exactly. And that's a problem. Like that also sends the
Yeah,
wrong
that doesn't work.
message.
Yeah,
Right.
no
Exactly.
doubt.
The other thing I want to put on the radar for those female listeners, um, if you know that you have a bad week every month, you have really bad cramps, or like you need to go to the bathroom a certain number of times to take care of yourself, like make sure you put that somewhere so that you're not booking yourself in back-to-back meetings. And I will share a very personal story. One time when I was using calendar links and I was getting booked back to back, I had like 3 days in a row where I like soiled myself because I didn't have time to go to the bathroom and change my tampon, which is awful and disgusting, and nobody should ever have to deal with that.
No.
And I like very much encourage young women to be open about it, like talk about it. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable for our male counterparts, but at the same time, this is a human thing. Like every human is aware of this, and
Yep.
everybody has a mother, and a lot of people have sisters and wives and daughters and all sorts of people around them that are female, and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to be honest about it and say, hey, this week is not a week I'm going to schedule back-to-back meetings because that will be painful.
And the other person maybe being uncomfortable isn't your problem at all. That's their individual problem. And coming from a man, usually if you do express any type of health related issue when it comes to women, you're going to get a pass very quick and easy that people are going to be understanding and accommodating to taking care of yourself.
I'm going to
So
be
that
honest,
should absolutely
like
never be a
that is
concern.
not the truth. Like that might be your truth, but that is not most women's experience in an office environment.
Really?
Like I can tell you, up until probably 3 to 4 years ago, if you said anything about women's health in that way, a lot of men would respond with, "You're just using that as an excuse," or again, like, and not believe the severity of like what women go through, right? And so I do think that that's changing. I think it takes everybody talking about it and being open about it to make that change and kind of busting down those stigmas. But there is still that stigma that women use it as an excuse, and it is not. And it's also okay to like, start a meeting 5 minutes late. Like it is okay to say, hey, I need a break. I'll be there late, right? Like just making sure that
100%.
you have the permission to do that, and especially young professionals that don't know what's okay and how to say that appropriately, like Hopefully you have some men like Byron in your life who are like, oh yeah, that's normal. Go deal with your stuff. I'm here later, right?
Well, but that's where I think, like you said, it doesn't need to be that. Like we always say, I need a bio break. Bio doesn't necessarily have to be the norm. I'm not going to say normal. Sorry, I didn't mean that. The 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 common two
Other
functions
use
that
of our
normally that
actions.
refers to.
Yeah,
um,
and maybe that's a probably another episode for us to talk about in the future. But I think if you are in that type of work environment, that raises a lot of red flags as to whether or not that is a culture that you want to continue to be in. So, that raises a lot of concerns, and that it pains me physically to hear that that is a reality.
Yeah, it sucks. And also, busy season is a great time to tell that you're in a toxic culture. This is one tell. What's another tell of a toxic culture during busy season, guys?
Definitely another episode. I hear it. The red flags episode coming up. Stay tuned.
Yes. But I do think busy season toxicity comes out through something I call martyr syndrome, where you have people in the firm who say, like, I worked all weekend. What did you do? That they brag about staying late or brag about like pulling all-nighters and it's celebrated. And people are like, yeah, bro, like that was awesome. Like you totally rocked that project, right? And it's like, for what? What did you rock that project for? Not your mental health, not your physical health. Definitely not going to change your paycheck. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's like one of those things that was celebrated for generations prior to us, which is why it continues to be celebrated today. This idea of like working long hours, first in, for last one out kind of philosophy is just, we need to change the narrative around, celebrating that type of behavior and promoting that type of experience, to where if people are bragging about that, it's kind of like, wow, what could you have done better so you didn't have to do an all-nighter? What could have been different? Because that's certainly nothing to celebrate.
yeah. It's not at all. So we at one of the big firms I worked in, we used to call one of the partners like the death searcher, like from the bubonic plague when people would like go look for the dead, you know? And he would walk around at 6 o'clock every night and write down the names of everybody there. And then at 9 o'clock every night and write down the names of everyone there. And then he would walk around one last time before he left, which was normally around 11:30 to midnight. And he would write
Nice.
down everyone's names. And it was very uncomfortable. Nobody knew where that list ever went or why he was doing it. He didn't communicate it. But like a curious, normal human, I, of course, was like, what are you writing down? And walking around following him, watching him write down the names of everybody in the office. And that is a clear indicator of toxic culture, guys.
Wow.
Mhm.
Scary. Scary.
No kidding.
I've seen the flip of it. So I've seen it as superhero. I call it superhero syndrome, where it's more of this, look, I did this great thing for my client and I worked really hard and produced this great thing. And then I did it again this week and I did that. And I see that also leading to burnout. I myself have done that several times, where it's not so much the victimhood and the martyring, but I did all these great things, and hey, look, I worked all these hours is sort of the underlying with that. And what I found in that is that also it's not sustainable. Yeah, you might be doing great things, but how often can you keep doing these heroic efforts, and eventually you just burn yourself out
You
as
end up
well.
the burnout, as Byron introduced the episode. The burnout.
The burnout. Well, and right, so one of those is like, I was so busy this week, I didn't eat lunch all week. That type of stuff. And this is something I don't, it's probably been, God, 10 years. I don't remember when, but something Liz said to me many years ago, was that you will eat more healthy if you plan your meals ahead of time. And, I think this is one of those things that I've tried really hard to do is to think ahead because for so many years I did not plan my breakfast, my lunch, we'll talk about dinner at another time. But, so it would be a mad scramble and a run and a grab, usually unhealthy, whatever is the quickest thing. And so making a plan, I mean, ChatGPT has changed the way that I eat because I use it to help come up with a meal plan. I figured out how to make breakfast sandwiches ahead of time and, vacuum seal them. And then I can have really great breakfast sandwiches in the morning to start my day. So planning and thinking ahead as far as like actual like breakfast and lunch meal planning so that you don't brag about, I didn't eat lunch all week because I was so busy.
And that reminds me, going back to the calendar, bring that in, is just blocking lunch.
Yeah.
Whether it's an hour, half an hour, whatever you want to do, just block that. In fact, I wrote down a note because I'm like, I need to do that next year. I'm going to start blocking lunch so that I at least always have that break.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, making sure that you have healthy snacks that feed your brain, right? Like that's another piece of it too, where like if I only have, I have a small child at home, so we have lots of like little kid snacks. If that's all the snacks that are in the house, that's all the snacks that I'll eat. But if there's like an
Yeah.
apple or a cucumber or something that like is nutritious and relatively filling for easy eating and also feeds my brain and makes me smarter in the process of digestion, that's better than, dealing with the slog of eating crap.
I just bought this big bag of goldfish that I love.
Oh man,
I
if
do
there's
love
fruit
goldfish.
snacks in there, I'm just gonna crush that whole box. But I tell you, one of my favorite things is, on Sunday to get a bunch of peppers and just slice them up and put them in individual baggies. They're in the fridge, easy to grab, and man, I can throw down on peppers all week. So good.
That's funny. All right, we're gonna have a pepper throwdown episode too.
Let's
See how that
do
goes.
it. Absolutely. So as we were logging on, we were talking about stand-up desks as well. And this need to be moving, which does significantly help with, stress and anxiety and burnout and all the things. So even, using Donnie, you talked about like having a watch that would remind you to stand up. I've gotten really bad about not using my stand-up desk. So I need to put some like reminder somewhere to tell me to stand up and move my feet.
I'll just randomly text you.
That'd be
Tell you
awesome
to stand
too.
up.
That would text from Liz. That'll make my day. Absolutely. Telling me to stand up.
He's gonna start looking behind him like, "What?"
You're not standing. Um,
That sounds like a good
absolutely.
app, Byron. Why don't you build that? Automated
Text
random
from
text.
Liz.
Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down.
You need
There
to go
was
to the
a
bathroom.
Kickstarter a few years ago that was a program where they programmed it where they lock your computer out for 5 minutes and then turn your camera on and you have to do like a certain number of calisthenics. So if it's like 10 push-ups or sit-ups, like you set it to the amount of minutes that you're willing to be locked out. And then the camera actually like made sure you were doing it. It got really
Wow.
because it would show up like in the middle of meetings and I'd be like, oh, okay, I have a 2 minute lockout. So I'm just going to be off this meeting for 2 minutes and nobody's going to know why. And I'm going to come back a little sweaty and a little uncomfortable. But I liked the idea of it. Execution,
Yeah.
questionable. Idea, great.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, when you think about today, we have so many sensors regarding, like the Aura rings and the Fitbits and our phones and everything like that. So even, maybe you need to get 5,000 steps in before you can unlock your phone in the morning, or something like that. And that's one of the other things, like especially for a lot of people who do not commute to work anymore, there's really no wind up or wind down time to your day. So, building in some sort of like, especially if you have dogs, walking the dog or creating some sort of kind of commute for yourself to kind of get yourself in the mode and then the wind down time can be really important as well.
Yep, totally. I walk
100%.
my kid to school every day for that reason. And you were talking about breakfast and lunch planning. My breakfast plan is my partner makes me a beautiful omelet every single morning with all sorts of vegetables, and I'm so lucky. But I never have to think about breakfast.
Ah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
For the commute, I actually know a friend that works from home. But what she does, she actually goes and she takes the driver on the block to start her day. To listen to a
Yeah,
podcast or something and come back.
That's funny.
that's awesome.
I would walk around the block and then walk to the other side of my house.
Makes sense.
Nothing wrong with that.
I think that part of that again comes back. It's the intentionality of the schedule. So even for myself, every morning I start off with it's just 5 to 10 minutes of yoga just to get through some basic stretching. I
Sure.
tried to do like the half an hour. I never were able to get myself to do consistently, but 5 minutes right, usually in the bathroom, right when I'm starting my day, I'm like doing some stretches, doing some simple stuff that I found has really helped just with my back, and I get really tight hamstrings. I don't get that anymore, even if I end up sitting all day because of meetings.
That's awesome. And on that note, booking, if you're not a massage person, then just close your ears, but schedule out some massages. I definitely have, a monthly massage. Mine's scheduled for tomorrow, in fact, to book that time because, even if it is just sitting a whole lot, like those things, your muscles need it. It's a really great time to recharge.
Yep, I'm a regular every 2 to 3 weeks for me.
That's the thing I forget about, like haircuts.
It's a little easier for women.
Yeah, I remember when it is so painful that I'm like, oh, somebody should really help me with this back issue right now. Like maybe I should book a massage. But until then, I forget. So a good comeback, Byron, when I tell you to stand up is to tell me to go get a massage.
There we go. Awesome. Yeah, my internet just like was weird, so I missed that. But yeah, that's it. I will plan that. I will ask you if your massage is scheduled yet.
The answer will likely be no.
Yeah, but get it
So the
done.
other thing that you can get with stand-up desks that helps a lot with, especially if you get tight hamstrings, is balance boards.
I've been thinking about doing that. Maybe this will be the motivator to do it. I'm actually standing on. I have a weight bag that has two 5-pound bags of rice in it that I use for my feet, and I'm standing on that right now just because it feels good on my feet. But a balance board would be great.
Yeah, no, balance boards are super fun. Also gets you ready for ski season. So,
I
Bonus.
used to actually do something similar. You're making me think I need to bring it back. I actually have a balance ball chair.
mhm.
I used to actually use the super big bounce ball and just sit on the bounce ball itself. That had a little less structure to it, so it was difficult to maintain for longer periods. But the bounce ball chair, I found because it's the smaller ball inside of a chair, so it has the back versus the other one didn't have the back. That actually I did for a while. And I'm thinking, hearing you say, I think I gotta actually go find that and start doing that again too.
Mhm. Yeah, those are great. So I've been recently going through the alternative furniture and like what works well for people with attention
Yes.
or sitting still issues like myself and also my son because we just finalized an IEP for him so that he can have all the things written down so he doesn't get in trouble when he like randomly stands up and walks around the classroom because he physically cannot sit still any longer. And a lot of the stuff is like stuff adults should do too, like putting exercise bands on chair legs if you're sitting down and just like bouncing on it, right? Like that makes a
Yep.
big difference, or having them around the sides of desks so you can just pull on them randomly on your with your arms. Like standing desks, of course, is a big one. Alternative chairs, like the balance ball chair is a good one, or they make these wobble chairs that are like stools that have a base that kind of
Seen
wobbles,
those. Those are
where
fun.
you have to support it with your core, which is really good because then you're engaging your core muscles when you're not even like realizing it. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of things like that you can buy before busy season just to get ready for it and thinking like I'm going to be at a desk more often than normal. So let's make it as comfortable and easy and good for my body as possible, right? Because we all know sitting still is like really, really bad for your body.
Yeah, what do they say? Sitting still is like the new cigarettes or something, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. So, don't sit still at your desk and go get a smoking habit, like balance, right? A kid. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea.
You can smoke while you're walking around the block. There you go.
Yeah.
That's
Well, when I worked at one of the big firms, the only acceptable like time to leave the
smoke
office
break,
was
right?
smoke breaks. And so I just pretended to smoke for years and they would all go smoke and I would go walk around the block and come back when they were done with their cigarettes and they'd be like, okay, let's go up. And yeah.
Too funny. Too
Hmm.
funny.
We talked about calendar scheduling and protection. In a sense, we talked about drawing some boundaries around your time, um, physical movement and things. Any other tips you think we can give for a better
We talked
busy
about
season?
planning nutritious food as well, making sure that you're feeding your brain. And then, I think the other really important thing about busy season is if you feel burnout starting, and there is a very definite feeling of it, it's like that feeling of, okay, I have to do this, but it's physically challenging to force myself to do it. If you start to feel that, figure out ways to build in stuff you love, right? And I would encourage you to talk to your supervisor, your boss, whoever you work most directly with, and say things like, hey, I feel like I'm starting burnout. Once this project is done, I'm going to take half a day and go for a hike or, go skiing or whatever thing you like to do in the winter that makes you happy. Like, and, physical outside, like don't sit down and watch video games. Like that'll just make burnout worse. I can tell you that from personal experience. You need to interact with like the sun and the outdoors and like get fresh air and fresh food and a change of scenery. But yeah, pick an activity like that and ask for the time to do it because it will interrupt that burnout and it will help you get your brain back on track.
That's a really great point. And I was just going to reinforce kind of something similar is don't feel guilty to ask for some time to take care of yourself. I think that's one of the things that people often do is they almost feel guilty to take care of themselves. So they just grin and bear it, which just makes it worse. So do not feel guilty to ask for that time. But you reminded me of something else, Liz. Morning sunlight is really important for getting your day started. So, if you have the ability to get direct sunlight in some way, shape, or form, do that. If not, get one of those lamps that creates artificial sunlight. Doing something, it is really critical for being in a productive state of mind, getting that blue light in your eyes and some sun on your skin.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, as a leader, like running a team, I would rather my team members be honest about where they're at and communicate status on projects than take longer to do it because they're burnt out and frustrated and not being super productive. And sometimes there are other resources that we can pull in to support. Sometimes there's not. During busy season tends to be the time when it's hard to come by resources. And so sometimes it's a conversation of like, okay, so go take 2 hours right now, come back tomorrow refreshed. We'll get through this week, and then you're going to take next Monday off, right? And figuring out how to get creative with time and ensuring people are, taking what they need to be okay, right? Because busy season does suck and, there is still a lot of work to get done. And it is hard not to feel guilty or not to feel like you're abandoning somebody. But there are ways to get your job done without being forced to sit at a desk, for the whole time.
Yeah, some of what you're saying reminds me, I really liked the current AICPA chair, Carla McCall, once said, asking for help is a sign of strength. And she actually said it in the sense of kind of a personal crisis, but I think it applies even a lot in what we're doing in busy season. It's if you're just bombarded, talk to, like Bliss said, talk to your supervisor, talk to the manager, somebody, HR if you need to, if you're not getting effect there, and just, hey, I'm overloaded. I'm going to burn out, because you don't want to wait until it actually happens. It's like, I'm going to burn out, but if I can take a half a day, whatever, as a mental health day, not work on the weekend, whatever it is you need to do to get that exception, reaching out for that help before you're actually in that burnout, right, is so important.
Well, and if you like the place you work and you want to continue working there, like don't put yourself through that because then you'll get to a point of no return. And everybody has one, even in the best jobs, if they put themselves in that situation. And I do believe that, toxic cultures don't like boundaries. Healthy cultures will respect boundaries and help you develop ones that are in line with still getting your job done, right? Because there's absolutely balance and you can't say no to everything. Like that's crazy. But you can say no to too much. And you can put boundaries around what you need and what's acceptable and what's okay. And so, it's hard as a young professional to learn what's okay and what's not, and where the professional lines are, and what is toxic and what is normal. But it is something that you need to work on and be open with and work with your supervisor on developing so that you know what that is.
Absolutely.
I kind of bridged into it with the HR conversation too, but I think the other thing, if you're really hitting this point, is knowing whether there's like an employee assistance program available. Because if you are really hitting that burnout point or any type of mental crisis, I'm really going to say, because we talk about it as this is a function of mental health, and making sure that you're okay, to reach out to find out what resources are available out there. And one of the other things I think we really need to do is destigmatize getting therapy. It's not only crazy people that get therapy. Anyone that's going through these types of things. And again, we want it to be preventative, right? We want it to be before you're actually in that crisis or having that anxiety attack or panic attack or whatever it is. When you start to see these signs, you really need to be more proactive and ensure that you don't hit that bad point.
And I think like living in extreme burnout leads to actual mental health crisis. So the longer you maintain that and the longer you play martyr or superhero or whatever you want to call it, the worse the chance of actual mental health crisis is, right? And so I completely agree with you. Like employee assistance programs are awesome. We have one that gives like, I think 3 free sessions with BetterHelp for anything. Like you can message them and say, I stubbed my toe and I'm really upset about it. And they'll be like, wonderful, here's 3 free mental health sessions. Like, go take them, right? And you can see if you develop a rapport with that counselor, and then, it's a low subscription fee that they give you discounts on after that, right? But then there's also, just help if you get to crisis and you can't work, right? Like that's what insurance is for. But don't get there. Like that's the point of this conversation, is how do you avoid getting to the point where you have a mental health crisis, which is definitely stigmatized, but definitely happens all the time. And while I was growing up in big firms, most of the partners would say they had a health emergency. Later, when you got to know them better, they would tell you about the panic attacks they were having and how they were freaking out and just couldn't physically get to work for like a week or whatever it was, right? And so, sometimes people call it something other than what it is, but those are mental health crises. And that's
we have that reminds me of something. So for this, from the center, we actually have a whole toolkit. If people are interested in learning about any of these types of things, we also have one that's specifically around, we had a therapist on, a counselor on, and he actually talked us through how do you find the right therapist to work with. So if you're interested in looking at any of that, the link is link.improvetheworld.net/ARC busy season 2025. Sorry, I know that was a long one. link.improvetheworld.net/ARC busy season 2025. And come check out, we've got a ton of resources, a variety of videos that describe some of the things that we've discussed, as well as some additional things like journaling and meditation. And you can hear some of the stories too from some people that have been through this and their lessons learned.
Yeah. And honestly, so I live with a mental health professional. My partner runs a clinical team for 988, the National Suicide Hotline. So I hear all about, suicidology at a regular basis. Understanding like the psychology of it is really fascinating. But it's also really common that people have suicidal thoughts. And most of the time, they just want things to be different, right? They don't actually want to end their lives. They just want things to be different. And that's how the human emotions express. that feeling. So there's always 988 if you feel like you're in crisis or need to talk to someone, which is free and federally funded. And the other side of that is there are higher suicide rates in accounting. And there have been for a long time than average. And that's due to the pressure, and a lot of it having to do with the pressure of busy season. And like, I mean, I've known a few people in accounting to take their own lives, and it's pretty awful when it happens. And it's like secondary trauma just to be close to that, right? But be aware that that's a thing that happens in this profession. And we are talking about this and being open about it and trying to help you identify toxicity where it exists, because that's not the future we want for this profession, and that's not the future we have to have, right? And so learn from the past and talk about it openly, and get the help that's needed if that's a path you're on, but better to just avoid it altogether.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a huge trend in firms that are reducing, if not getting rid of the required, used to be 55, 60 hours. I'm hearing it go down to 45, 50, even if not totally gone it completely during busy season. So as you're interviewing, as you're talking to employers, that's something definitely to ask about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
understand that like you can take your PTO, like they give it to you for a reason, so take it. I think that I never understand when people have, accrued all of the PTO possible and never take it, and they just don't take time off. Like, that's nuts to me. Like, plan something to look forward to. Like, pick your favorite place in the world and give yourself a bonus. So busy season ends and you're on a plane.
Nice.
Yeah, you can find me in some other country. So
Go chase down Liz.
I'll go chase
Doing
Donny
a
in
good
Singapore next time.
I'll be there in March. Come on down.
Nice. Done.
That brings up another interesting aspect, though, which is sometimes I'm not necessarily encouraged that if you are going through a burnout, but sometimes it's also about just keeping in mind there is an end to busy season. And sometimes what we do is we balance by working a little harder. I'm not going to say a lot harder because I don't want it to be burnout, but we work a little harder during busy season. But then in summer, we get some of that time off. Like, I know a bunch of firms that will either close on Fridays or do half-day Fridays. I know some firms like Byron, our friend Jackie, who pretty much shuts down their firm, I think, for a month or so in the summer so that she can be out at the beach club.
Yep, absolutely. So keeping in mind, what you're looking forward to. And if it is you have a trip planned or those other benefits, I mean, I think keeping perspective of why you are working so hard and what you're working towards can also help with some of those tough moments where you're just like, grinning and bearing it. If you just think about what's on the horizon. Very good. Well, I think we filled the basket of things to do to have a successful busy season. It's been a great conversation. I certainly have some ideas and things to take away and implement myself, even in the non-busy times of year.
I will go fill a basket with fruit.
I'm going to go adjust my Calendly links.
All right. Thanks, guys. This was a great conversation.
Great. And good luck, everyone, getting through that busy season. We wish you the best. Take care.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.